I'm tired, so don't talk to me, Mike said flatly, avoiding eye contact as he pushed past me and headed toward the bathroom. I wanted to call out for him to stop, but my voice betrayed me and remained trapped in my throat. As Mike's indifferent back disappeared around the corner, my vision blurred. I collapsed to my knees, my face betraying nothing. I had often wondered if my patience was to blame, convincing myself that perhaps Mike was simply overwhelmed with work. I believed that if I could just change enough, Mike would revert to the man he used to be. I did everything I could think of, but Mike didn't change. It was then that I made the hardest decision of all. I told him as if for the final time, "Let's get a divorce." At that very moment, a new message popped up on Mike's smartphone, which lay casually on the table. I glanced at it and was taken aback. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I steeled myself. I resolved to make him feel the pain I had endured. I am Jane, 26 years old. I had recently married Mike, my boyfriend of 3 years, and left my family home. It feels strange to admit, but I was the youngest child in my family, cherished and adored. On the day I left, my entire family cried, urging me to be happy and asking Mike to take good care of me. Mike responded with a relaxed smile, even under my father's stern gaze. My father had two major concerns about Mike. First, Mike had been divorced from his previous wife, and that marriage had ended within just 6 months due to what was described as a personality clash. The briefness of that marriage worried my father, even though he agreed to our union. Understanding my father's worries, Mike decided to show his commitment in his own way. He presented a pre-filled divorce form and, with a serious expression, said, "If I cannot make Jane happy, please use this divorce form." He added, "I apologize for any trouble my previous divorce may have caused Jane's family. This is a guarantee, a promise from me to make her happy. Please accept it." Despite his confusion, my father seemed to grasp Mike's sincerity and accepted the form. The second reason for my father's concern was Mike's unique personality, which was difficult to fully understand. With a complex expression, my father nodded his approval, and our married life began. It was a newlywed life I had eagerly anticipated, yet what awaited me were unexpected challenges. After our marriage, I became a full-time housewife, waking up earlier than Mike each morning, preparing everything, and sending him off with a smile. Before marriage, Mike would kiss me and say, "I'm off. I'll do my best for you, Jane," while waving goodbye. But after we were married, Mike's demeanor changed completely. He started leaving the house without a word, and when he came home, he was distant and unresponsive. "Welcome back. Would you like to have dinner or take a shower first?" I would ask, but he responded lazily, "Bof. Are you okay? Does you feel well?" Even when I asked, confused, Mike would simply glance at me coldly and say, "Nothing's wrong." In retrospect, even that minimal response was better than what followed. A week into our marriage, Mike stopped responding altogether. On good days, he might give a brief word or gesture, but on bad days, he completely ignored me. "Hey, don't ignore me. You've been like this since we got married. Did I do something wrong?" I would plead, my eyes brimming with tears. But Mike remained silent. I demanded answers, and as tears streamed down my face, Mike sighed heavily. "You think crying will solve everything? Women have it easy," he said. I wanted to argue, but my tears wouldn't stop. All I could do was look down, trying to hide my pain. The truth is, my father runs a business. In other words, I am the president's daughter. Before we married, I worked as a regular employee at my father's company where I met Mike. He was in sales, and I often handled his paperwork. As we worked together, we grew closer, and he began asking for my help more frequently. Mike was surprised to learn that I was the president's daughter, but that discovery seemed to please him. He appreciated me for who I was, not just as the president's daughter. The Mike who used to listen to me attentively and respond with a warm smile is no longer present. Sometimes I wonder if things would have been better if we hadn't married. I question whether something is wrong with him or if I did something to provoke this change, but nothing specific comes to mind. It seems that the marriage itself might be the cause. Marriage often brings about complacency or changes in a person due to familiarity, and in Mike's case, it appears to have been more than just a minor shift. If I had known this side of Mike's personality before we married, I might never have gone through with it. I pulled out the pre-filled divorce form Mike had given me from my desk drawer. I wondered if submitting this document to the city office might somehow bring back the Mike I once knew. I spent days contemplating the form, taking it out and putting it back in its place. One afternoon, after returning from shopping, I found Mike waiting for me at home with an angry expression. Surprised to see him home on a weekday, I greeted him with a smile. Without warning, Mike slammed his hand on the table, startling me into sitting down. He walked over, looked down at me with a cold stare, and showed me a paper he was holding. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. I nodded, recognizing the pre-filled divorce form. It was supposed to be in the drawer, but I had forgotten to put it back before leaving. "Do you want a divorce?" he demanded. I was at a loss for words. The recent months with Mike had been mentally exhausting, and if things continued like this, a divorce might be inevitable. "You've changed since we got married. You ignored everything I say. This can't be happiness," I finally said, my voice reflecting the weariness I felt. "Is this how it's going to be?" I said, my voice trembling. Mike muttered, "So I'm the only one at fault." He stared at the divorce form with a mix of disdain and resignation. "Fine, we can divorce, but the problem is with you. You haven't supported your husband as a wife should," he said, waving the form dismissively. "But you promised my father you would make me happy," I reminded him. Mike snorted, as if a realization had struck him. "To make you happy? That's such a naive, privileged thought. You don't understand reality," he said, his tone cold. "That's cruel," I replied. "You and your family are naive. You should experience poverty." I struggled to grasp the full meaning of Mike's words, but it soon became clear. He stopped providing me with any living expenses, took away my credit card and bank book, and I was left without a source of income after resigning from my job at his request. "I want you to greet me with a smile when I come home," Mike had said, which led me to become a full-time housewife. The biggest issue was food. Our supplies were dwindling, and I had to humble myself to ask Mike for money. "Could you please give me some living expenses?" I pleaded, feeling humiliated. Mike, with a smug smile, said, "Don't worry about it. I'd eat out." Despite my repeated pleas, he ignored me, and no money was forthcoming. Mike began staying out late at night or leaving early in the morning, often not coming home at all. I managed with the dwindling food supplies and instant meals, but I was reaching my limit. On the rare occasion when Mike came home on time, I finally voiced the thoughts that had been weighing on me. "You don't give me money, we don't talk, and this is far from a happy life. It doesn't even feel like a marriage," I said. "If things don't change and you have no intention of improving, then I want a divorce." I said this, hoping it might prompt some change in Mike, desperate for a way out but bracing myself for the possibility that nothing would change. I felt I had no choice but to give up. This was my last resort. Anxiously, I waited for Mike's reaction. He looked down, scratching his head in frustration, and muttered in a low voice, "You're annoying. I'm tired of this." With that, he pushed past me without another glance and headed for the bathroom. I tried to call out, "Wait," but no words came. As Mike's indifferent back disappeared from view, I felt a wave of dizziness and collapsed. His expression had remained unchanged throughout. I had endured so much since our marriage, trying to convince myself that his change was due to work stress, believing that if I adjusted, he might return to his former self. I thought I had done everything possible, but Mike remained distant and unchanging. Realizing that my efforts were in vain, I decided to take this final step. Even after mustering the courage to suggest a divorce, Mike's reaction was unsettlingly calm. Normally, if a man still cared for his wife, he would show some sign of distress at the suggestion of divorce. But Mike's face showed nothing but annoyance, confirming that he no longer loved me. It would be better to end the marriage cleanly. Continuing this relationship promised no positive outcomes. Maybe it was time to pack my things and move on. I slowly rose and made my way to the drawer where the divorce papers were kept. As I approached, I noticed Mike's phone flickering on the table. A message had arrived, and as I glanced at the screen, I was shocked by its content. The screen was filled with numerous heart emojis. I instinctively picked up the phone to read the message. "Last night was fun. Let's spend time together again," it said. The sender's name was Ellie, someone I didn't recognize. I checked toward the bathroom but saw no sign of Mike. His phone, left carelessly unlocked, revealed more as I scrolled through it. To my dismay, the screen displayed evidence of infidelity. Not just text messages but also photos of Mike embracing Ellie intimately. The clear evidence was startling, especially given the lack of any privacy measures. Was he too careless, or did he simply not care if it was discovered? I felt a surge of humiliation and anger as the truth unfolded before me. I remained remarkably calm as I photographed the evidence on Mike's phone with my own. I documented everything meticulously, ensuring that it could serve as undeniable proof. After capturing all necessary images, I returned the phone to its original place and went about my day as if nothing had happened. When Mike emerged from the bathroom, he said nothing and offered no explanation. He simply went back to his room, leaving me to grapple with the stark reality of his affair. His cold demeanor made sense now, and I accepted the truth with a heavy heart. From the following day, I resolved to start the divorce process. There was no room for doubt or confusion, only a surging anger at the betrayal. Determined to uncover the full extent of Mike's deceit, I began by investigating who Ellie was. I decided to hire a private investigator to gather reliable information. Simultaneously, I conducted my own research, noting that Mike's recent overtime and weekend work seemed increasingly suspicious. With my father's help, I was confident that the truth would be uncovered swiftly. Despite my reluctance to worry him, I had no choice but to act decisively. My goal was clear. Mike would face visible retribution. During the preparations for the divorce, the hardest part was enduring the sight of Mike's face every day. The face I once cherished now filled me with a profound urge to lash out. Whether he noticed or not, Mike commented, "You look worse than usual. Are you sick?" His lack of empathy stung, but I simply forced a smile and replied, "I'm fine." When Mike left for his usual weekend work, I put my plan into action. After confiding in my father, he arranged for me to move to a new place. He provided me with a $2 million mansion that belonged to a relative who was considering selling it. The sale wasn't urgent, allowing me to stay there for the time being. Additionally, my father covered my living expenses, making my new life more comfortable than ever. 3 days after I left, Mike called, clearly surprised. "Where are you right now?" he asked. I answered nonchalantly, "Who knows?" His agitation was evident as he continued, "I can't find the divorce papers." I was equally surprised. The fact that Mike had noticed the absence of the divorce papers and was searching for them in a panic was unexpected. Even after leaving the house, Mike's agitation was unmistakable. I could almost picture him panicking on the other end of the line, and a small smile crept onto my face. "What's the matter?" I asked coolly. "I've officially started the divorce process." Mike's voice was filled with confusion. "Why would you do that? You said yourself that if you couldn't make Jane happy, I should submit the papers. Remember?" I could hear the desperation in his tone as he stammered, realizing that he had underestimated my resolve. "That was just to reassure your parents," he said, attempting to downplay his earlier promise. It was clear now that he had been bluffing all along. "I also told you before that if things continued like this, I'd consider divorce," I reminded him. "I was tired of it, and I asked my father about your claims. Your department isn't that busy, is it?" Mike's excuses were falling apart. He had always pretended to be swamped with work, coming home late or working on weekends. I had trusted him without question, but I should have been more skeptical. My father had also found it suspicious when I discussed it with him yesterday. "You couldn't have had so many weekend shifts. What exactly kept you so busy? Where were you going every week?" There was no response from Mike. He was likely scrambling to come up with a plausible excuse. But any attempt now would be futile. I already knew the truth. "Ellie, isn't it?" I said, a hint of satisfaction in my voice. "She's quite cute, isn't she?" I could hear Mike's shocked gasp through the phone. "How do you know about her?" "The detective was very efficient in gathering photos and video evidence," I replied, glancing at the pictures and reports in my hand. "Ellie Moore, a 22-year-old office worker. She's a whole decade younger than you, and I'm only 8 years younger than you myself. It seems you have a preference for younger women." I continued, "Her apartment is just a short walk from the station, on the second floor. Were you visiting her every week?" Mike stammered, "Wait a minute, Ellie Moore. How do you know her name?" I couldn't help but continue, "Ellie Moore, right? Seems like your choices are catching up with you." "What a cute name, Ellie," I said, reflecting on Mike's behavior. Before our marriage, he had been incredibly affectionate, especially given the 8-year age gap between us. Looking back, his actions now felt nothing short of revolting. "The conversations between you and Ellie are all documented," I continued. "I see you were using the classic line of a married man. I'll be divorcing my wife soon. Couldn't you come up with something more original?" According to the detective, Mike had a low opinion of me. When Ellie expressed concern about me finding out, Mike had reportedly said, "I don't care anymore." It was clear he had taken me for granted. "Just wait," Mike said, trying to deflect. "There's been some misunderstanding. Let's meet and talk about this. That's a good idea, I agreed. We should at least discuss this face to face. So the next evening, we arranged to meet at the luxurious new house where I was staying. When Mike arrived at the scheduled time, he looked around, bewildered. "What's this mansion?" he asked. "This is where I live now," I replied. "It's worth $2 million. Mike's voice trembled. $2 million? My father, who was also present, added, "Your father-in-law is here today." Mike's eyes widened nervously. "Of course, Ellie is here too. It wouldn't be fair otherwise. This issue involves employees of the company, so I asked my father, the company head, to be present." Mike responded with a strained smile. "I see." My father's gaze was stern as he observed the scene. Ellie, petite with light-colored hair, seemed strong-willed despite her appearance. As the discussion began, she glared at me and declared, "I'm a victim too. I had no idea Mike was married. It's unpleasant to be called out here." Her boldness surprised me, but what shocked me more was Mike's reaction. "What are you talking about? It was you who insisted I hurry up with the divorce," Mike retorted. "That was just a joke," Ellie countered, turning her face away from him. As they argued, Mike muttered under his breath, "I can't believe I got involved with a woman like this." Ellie, hearing this, became furious, and their argument escalated. "Come on, as if I'd seriously fall for someone older like you," Ellie shouted. "What are you saying? This whole mess is your fault. You were the one who said our company was finished. That's why I decided to leave Jane." It became clear that soon after marrying me, Mike had been influenced by Ellie's claims that our company was on the brink of bankruptcy and that he was in danger. Initially, Mike had taken it seriously, but gradually, her persuasion had worn him down. Ellie's belief that the company was collapsing had only been reinforced by my kindness toward him, which she misinterpreted as a sign of impending failure. "I was just worried that you seemed tired," I said. It struck me as odd how everyone, including the bosses and colleagues, was being overly kind. Mike responded, "That's probably because they were trying to be careful around me, given that I'm the president's son-in-law." He continued, "The idea that my father's company is in crisis is a complete misunderstanding. My father, present at the meeting, clarified, the company is actually thriving. There's no risk of bankruptcy anytime soon." Hearing this, Mike slumped to his knees, clearly defeated. "What have I done?" he muttered, realizing he had been manipulated by Ellie. It became evident that Ellie had taken an interest in Mike after discovering his connection to the president's family. When Mike initially didn't reciprocate her feelings, she had spun a tale of the company's imminent collapse to manipulate him. His cold treatment towards me was likely intended to make the divorce process smoother. Mike, with a distorted expression, pleaded, "I was just deceived. You understand, right? I suppose you were misled," I conceded. "But now that everything is clear, there's no reason to avoid the divorce." Mike looked bewildered. It became clear he was the type to flee at the first sign of trouble, prioritizing his own safety. He had an affair, plotted a divorce without discussing it with me, and even tried to manipulate me into initiating the divorce. "You're a coward," I said. "If I were ill, you'd probably abandon me too." "No, I wouldn't," Mike insisted. "There's nothing more to discuss," I replied. "I just wanted to know why you ignored me. You were at fault." Mike's face twisted in shock. "A lawyer? That's too harsh. It was just a joke." He's the one who took it seriously. Both Mike and Ellie refused to accept responsibility, insisting they were not at fault. Their behavior was revolting. Realizing I had suffered because of them made me feel pathetic. "Understood," I said with a smile. "You two are perfect for each other. You're Sybil-like. I'm done with this mess. Goodbye." "Wait," Mike called out, but my father gently placed his arm around my shoulder, guiding me away. We left, ignoring his desperate